What if I told you? The man who created the most valuable company in human history was once homeless, broke, and kicked out of his own company. Steve Jobs. The name sounds like success, like genius, like perfection. But behind that black turtleneck and that perfect smile was a story so dark, so painful, that most people never talk about it. Stay with me, because this story will change the way you see success forever. It starts in 1955, San Francisco, California. A young woman gives birth to a baby boy, but she can't keep him. She gives him up for adoption. That baby boy was Steve Jobs. Paul and Clara Jobs adopted him. They were a simple, working-class family. No money, no connections, just love. But young Steve always knew he was different. He was obsessed, not with toys, not with sports, but with electronics, how things worked, why things worked. His neighbor, a man named Larry Lang, showed him something that changed his life forever, a carbon microphone. And in that moment, something clicked inside Steve Jobs. He didn't just want to understand technology. He wanted to create it. At 21 years old, Steve Jobs and his best friend Steve Wozniak built something in a garage, a personal computer. They called it Apple. The world had never seen anything like it. Money started flowing. Apple went public in 1980. Steve Jobs became a millionaire at 25, a billionaire at 25. Everything was perfect, right, wrong, because inside Apple, a war was brewing. Steve Jobs was a genius, but he was also difficult, demanding, brutal. He would tell engineers their work was garbage to their face. He would make people cry in meetings. He believed in perfection so deeply that he hurt everyone around him. So, the Apple board made a decision. In 1985, they fired Steve Jobs from his own company, the company he built, the company he created from nothing in a garage. Threw him out like he was nothing. Steve Jobs was 30 years old, and he had just lost everything. Most people would have given up, and for a while, Steve Jobs did. He described this period as devastating. He said, and I quote, "I didn't know what to do for months. I felt like I had let the previous generation of entrepreneurs down." He was depressed, lost. The media called him a failure. Silicon Valley laughed at him. But here's where the story gets interesting. Instead of quitting, Steve Jobs did something unexpected. He started over. He used his own money and started a new company called Next. Nobody believed in him. Investors said no. The press said he was finished. But Steve kept building. Then, he did something even more surprising. He bought a small, struggling animation company from George Lucas for just $5 million. That small, struggling company was Pixar. Yes, that Pixar, the company that made Toy Story, Finding Nemo, The Incredibles. While everyone thought Steve Jobs was finished, he was quietly building an empire. Now here's where the story becomes almost unbelievable. By 1997, Apple, the company that fired Steve Jobs, was dying. They were 90 days away from bankruptcy. 90 days. And in desperation, they called the one man they had betrayed. They called Steve Jobs. Steve walked back into Apple. The same halls where they had humiliated him. The same boardroom where they had fired him. And instead of revenge, he chose resurrection. He looked at everything Apple was doing, and he cut 70% of it. He said, "We need to focus, simple, clean, perfect." Then in 1998, he released the iMac. In 2001, the iPod. In 2003, iTunes. In 2007, the iPhone. The iPhone, the device that changed everything. The device that created an entirely new world. The same man they fired had just saved Apple and turned it into the most valuable company on Earth. But life had one more dark chapter for Steve Jobs. In 2003, at the height of his comeback, Steve Jobs was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Doctors told him to get surgery immediately. But Steve, stubborn as always, refused. He tried alternative medicine for 9 months. 9 months that may have cost him his life. By the time he agreed to surgery, the cancer had spread. For the next 8 years, Steve Jobs fought. He had surgeries, liver transplant. He stood on that Apple stage, thin, pale, barely standing, and still introduced the iPad, still introduced the iPhone 4. Because he couldn't stop. Creating was his life. On October 5, 2011, Steve Jobs passed away. He was 56 years old. His last words, according to his sister, were simply, "Oh wow, oh wow, oh wow." So what do we learn from Steve Jobs? He was abandoned at birth, fired from his own company, laughed at by the entire world. But he never stopped believing in what he was building. He once said, "I'm convinced that about half of what separates successful entrepreneurs from non-successful ones is pure perseverance." You will get fired. You will get betrayed. You will fail. Life will knock you down in ways you never expected. But the question is never if you fall. The question is, will you get back up? Steve Jobs got back up, and he changed the world. If this story moved you, hit that like button right now. It genuinely helps this channel grow. And subscribe, because every week we bring you the untold stories of the greatest minds in history. Comment below, what part of Steve Jobs' story hit you the hardest? I'll see you in the next one.